Hi, my name's Doug Marshak. To paraphrase the great Troy McClure, you may know me better as the State Director of Instruction for the Minnesota State Referee Committee for the last 12 years, as well as a state assessor and a U.S. soccer referee coach that has provided that role at multiple youth and adult regional events, until U.S. Soccer decides to strip that title away from me. But I'm not here to talk about U.S. Soccer or USSF refereeing today. I'm here representing my own opinions and views and working to correct some misinformation that I wasn't really thrilled to watch last week. So what exactly is this? Well, every other year, high school officials in Minnesota are supposed to attend a classroom session or a Zoom session as part of their training. So I sat through mine last week. For the past couple of years, they've used some video clips to provide education, and I always sit pretty quietly through these. I don't try to interject because I'm not an instructor for Minnesota high school soccer. I am just a referee in Minnesota high school soccer, and education isn't really my responsibility or role. But in this year's training, there was a clip used, and let's just say the instruction wasn't great. There were a lot of mistakes made in the clip that the referee did, and really one of the things that really bugged me is one of the instructors said, quote, "There really isn't anything that the crew could have done differently in this situation." That statement was blatantly incorrect, dangerous to say, and I'm guessing at least 300 to 400 people saw it, which is, I don't want people thinking that when it comes to officiating youth soccer. So there was a ton that the crew could have done differently. And should have done differently. And if we're not going to be honest about it, tell them that, then we're just not doing a good job of referee education. You know, those poor folks are going to go out and make the same mistake again. I'm not interested in being an apologist for referees and just saying that everything they do is fine. I'm interested in making soccer officiating better. That doesn't mean they're bad people or they're poor referees, but it does mean they made some mistakes and we need to fix those. So this isn't a series per se. I'm just posting this on my personal YouTube channel, which, to be fair, over the years I've posted lots of dumb videos on my YouTube channel concerning my family on vacation and stuff like that. So the views and opinions that I'm going to talk about here are my own. They're not that of the Minnesota State High School League, any soccer referee, or any officials association for high school, or any other officials, certainly not opinions of the Minnesota State Referee Committee or U.S. Soccer. I'm doing this because when it boils down to it, people who officiate youth soccer are usually amateurs, and they can and will make mistakes. Mistakes are okay. I think it's safe to say that just about anybody who's involved with youth soccer, referees, coaches, parents, whoever, want to see officials do a good job and improve. I know every game I personally officiate, I self-review, I'm hard on myself, and I learn from my mistakes. I'm going to follow this video up with a second one, probably in the next couple weeks, that tears apart my own performance in a game that I officiated. So I'm just going to do that to show you all I practice what I preach. But that's for another video. So we're going to show the clip here, and then I'm going to break it down and talk about different things that could have gone differently. This is not an attack on the referees in the game again. I have seen this happen lots of times in comparable situations to lots of officials. The fact that it does continue to happen goes to show we aren't doing a good job of teaching people to handle it right. And if we're telling people that there isn't anything they could have done differently, then we're not doing justice to the people who are officiating youth soccer. So let's do some teaching.
First to it was Serhey for the Hawks. Pace is starting to pick up in this one. Last couple of minutes. There's a whistle. That might be a card. Dangerous tackle from behind, and the yellow card does come out. Injured player down for Humboldt with 21:54 to go on a dangerous slide tackle attempt from behind. Ibrahim gets the yellow card. Can't quite locate the number of the Hawks player that's down on the field. Now you're seeing some extracurricular spilling out. Mawing was very upset, defensive player for Humboldt, and he's being calmed down by his goalie, Mutu Salah. Adrenaline running high, certainly, for both of these teams. Humboldt player that was down is the sophomore midfielder, Gay 2.
Okay, let's start with the challenge and the foul. This is both a great tackle to start and turns out being an awful challenge. How can it be both things? Well, let's watch it in slow motion. So White 14 slides in and he cleanly pushes the ball away from Black 8 with the lead foot on this slide tackle. If that was the end of this tackle and nothing else happened, that is a great tackle. When you see a tackle like this where there's no contact, let's give some credit when a player can execute it so well. I love great slide tackles. I think they're part of the game. When they're done right, they're just fantastic to watch, and they take a great amount of skill, and people should get credit for them. This one unfortunately goes south. So after the ball is pushed away, White 14's angle and speed causes the trail leg, which isn't involved in the challenge and doesn't contact the ball, to roll up the back of Black number 8's leg. And that's kind of ugly. This is no longer a great slide tackle. It's a really bad challenge. The contact is to the back of the attacker's leg, and we can tag this in a lot of ways that would get us thinking about using a red card. It's from behind, it's at speed, it can cause serious injury, there's no regard for the well-being of the opponent. Those are all FIFA considerations that frankly certainly push this in the direction of a red card. But my personal opinion here is that I'm okay with just a yellow here. If the defender doesn't get the ball, then this is absolutely a send-off. The fact that he does get the ball, though, means that there's an opportunity to win the ball. He actually makes contact with the ball first. So he's not just flying in with no regard for the safety of his opponent. He's making a legitimate tackle. And frankly, he almost pulls it off. It's a foul. It's a bad foul. It's reckless at a minimum. I'm good with yellow. If somebody else wants to tell me this should be red for all of those FIFA considerations I mentioned earlier, I'd buy it. Dealer's choice. It's got to be a card. If I see a card, I'm happy with a card. And whatever reason is given to defend it, I'm probably going to be okay with it. This whole situation goes south almost immediately after the whistle. So a part of that is outside of the control of the referee. And namely, it's due to the fact that in high school, the clock has to stop when a card is given. So the referee has to make that idiotic crossed arm signal to tell the clock keeper to stop the clock before they take disciplinary and game administration duties. And honestly, American high school soccer's adherence to silly signals and rules that the rest of the soccer world doesn't use, except American college soccer, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now, sometimes creates these situations where the referee has to flop their arms around like a cheerleader. And it makes them look kind of silly. And when you're hurting the referee's credibility, that does not help them control a volatile situation. Apparently, this signal is for the sake of, I don't know, communicating that some precious seconds on the clock have to be preserved. Because, American kids who watch English Premier League, MLS, Serie A, La Liga, and Bundesliga every weekend would never be able to understand that a clock could just run to full time and then the referee could add time at the end like the rest of the world does. And obviously, whoever's keeping the clock would never be able to figure out that when the card comes out, they need to stop it. So, I'm obviously being facetious, but anyway, I'm digressing. Let's move on. So the problem is that the choices the referee makes in his initial administrative steps here do undermine his ability to sell his decision. So Black 8's rolling on the ground. Hopefully he still has an ACL. Debatable. We know we're going to book 14 White. If we want to show the players that we care about them and their well-being, what's the first thing the referee should do? Probably get somebody out there to check on the kid's well-being, right? Get the trainer out to help number 8 and search for the remnants of his knee ligaments in the turf. Let's tuck that thought away for a moment. So the referee decides his first action is to show a yellow card to White 14 first. Now, this is a bad idea. Why is it a bad idea? So I already talked a little bit about how this card could go either way, yellow or red. And I pointed out that 14 also took the ball first. So odds are, whatever you're going to choose, both sides here are going to be at least disappointed and at worst flagrantly pissed off at you. In this case, it's the latter. I count 3 white players instantly throwing their arms around that any card is ridiculous. "He got the ball, bruh. How can you card that, bruh? Do you even understand what a good tackle looks like, bruh?" Right? We've all heard that. Bad challenge, you pull a card and someone wants to tell you that you're, being way too severe. Meanwhile, here's a teammate of the murder victim in utter disbelief that the card isn't red, and here's the black team's coach throwing a temper tantrum that the card isn't red. So hold that thought on the coach. We're going to come back to that later. Like I said, everybody is now pissed off. So again, back up. The first thing that we need to do when there's an attempted murder on the field is maybe give the victim of the crime some medical attention. We get the poor player that attention. You can still manage the perpetrator. "Hey, 14, don't walk away from me. I'm not done with you." Lets you take a breath, maybe go through the thought process of what color the card is you're going to show, and it shows the players that you actually give a crap about their well-being, which, will help you. Alas, it gets worse. Having shown the card, the referee now decides he has to do his next administrative task, as dictated by the high school rules. And apparently that is not get the kid a trainer still. Instead, it's to go tell the coach of the kid who was carded why he was carded. Off he goes to report the card, being hounded by white players the whole way, while the severed remains of the attacker's knee ligaments remain scattered on the field and nobody's out there helping the poor kid. So it's finally AR1 who tells the trainer that she can go out there. Good on AR1. Now, I've already digressed once about the mind-numbing dumbness of some high school rules, so let's just go in again here. High school says the referee has to explain the card to the carded player's coach because it's, quote, an educational opportunity, and this is an educational environment. Now, let me make something clear. I don't disagree with that. But let's say here you're the coach of the white team. You just saw your player try to harvest that opponent's knee ligaments to sell on the black market, and the referee is going to pull a card out. So do you really need the referee to come over and tell you why he gave that card? I mean, you saw that tackle. I mean, if I'm the coach, I'd be like, "Yep, got it. I'll have a conversation with him. I'll tell him, I'll provide my educational dictated role here to ensure he understands why committing tackles like that will be a detriment to the greater good of society and affect his future job prospects." Whatever. Okay. I get it. The coach knows what their role is here, and if they know why the player was carded, they don't really need to have a conversation. And besides, half of these conversations turn into arguments about whether the coach thinks the referee should have carded the kid. Every year, NFHS and the state associations always remind the coaches that this report is not to be used to dissent the decision. But I've been officiating high school soccer for 24 years now, and somehow that message hasn't gotten across to all the coaches. Kind of weird, huh? So this high school rule ends up creating more dissent about half the time, which is totally frustrating. I am not saying that referees in high school shouldn't have to report the cards. So if you caution a kid for dissent, or if you send a kid off for foul language, you should go over and tell the coach exactly what the kid said, so that educational opportunity thing can happen. But on a tackle like this, the coach doesn't need to have a conversation, and if it provokes more dissent, it's just creating a bigger problem on the field. So, okay, digression over. This is still not the end of it. The black team's coach now enters the field, not having been told that he can do so, of course. If you look around, none of the crew actually told the coach he could go out there. He just starts walking out there. And as he does so, he's ripping into the referee quite visibly. As he approaches his injured player, his vocal and visual attempts to get that kid thrown out now picks the interest of the kid's teammates, who then start approaching the coach and start yelling at him. So now the coach turns and starts yelling at those players of the other team. He puts his arms out. He gestures them to get away from his player. He tells them maybe to go to their own bench, which, by the way, they don't have to do. I mean, hopefully that's all he's saying. I hope he's not saying anything else inappropriate, but we wouldn't know because there's nobody from the referee crew around to deal with any of this. The fourth and the referee are over talking to the white coach about why the guy got carded, which, as I've said, is pretty obvious, and neither assistant is there. So, eventually, as the coach is being provocative, one of the white players actually shoves him, which does finally cause the assistants to come flying off the line, and the fourth official and referee realize, oh shit, maybe there is something more important happening than our need to explain to the white coach why I gave the player a card for something that he did with 200 witnesses. So, even when the crew arrives, the black coach is still barking at the white players, still provoking confrontation. There's a lot of pointing, finally some player separation, so there's no longer any black players or white players in direct conflict. And relieved of the need to protect his fallen player from that apparently lethal threat of white players lingering in the area, the black coach, of course, now turns his attention to his injured player to comfort him. Just kidding. The black coach now turns to the referee and starts back into him on how it should have been a red card. Completely ignores his injured player, only cares about trying to talk the referee into changing his mind and giving a straight red to the white player, which we all know is a very common coaching tactic that results in the coach getting what he wants at least 75% of the time. I'm just kidding again. Never seen that work in 25 years being a soccer referee. So the injured player is finally helped / carried off the field, and this cluster's over. So what should have happened? Well, we already said that getting injured players' attention immediately should always be a priority. There are times when a quickly displayed card can settle a situation, but let's do some real teaching here. What are those situations? A quick card is only useful if you know everybody's going to be like, okay, the referee's got it, we don't need to do anything else. So, player grabs the jersey of an attacker running down the wing that's stopping a promising attack, SPA, it's unsporting behavior. You run over there, you've got the yellow card out right away, you show it, everyone's like, okay, cool, he's carding it. We don't need to, get in his face or yell at him or complain anymore. Attacker comes flying in with his studs high and kicks the goalkeeper in the face on a 50-50 ball. You're going to pull that red card out. You're screaming in there, showing it so everybody can see that it's going to be red. Now everyone's like, yeah, that was red. We don't need to go yell at that attacker because he's already getting his marching orders. Everybody cools down. So quick cards can be useful in those sorts of situations because everybody agrees with them. There isn't a lot of debate about it. But in this situation, we're waffling. We talked about how it could be yellow, could be red. It's orange. Okay. And if you know somebody is going to want red and the other team doesn't even want a yellow, like the white players responded, they were amazed that their teammate was getting carded. The quick card's just going to set things on fire. Get the trainer out, separate the perpetrator, and then think about it while you're making sure everybody else is cool. You don't need to pull the card quickly. Get everybody to know you're going to deal with it. 14, I'm not done with you, but, you don't need to whip that card out like Quick Draw McGraw. So, second, if you have an orange card situation, the foul between yellow and red, and if you're going to go yellow, it needs to be made bigger. Okay? You're going to chew the player out before you give the yellow card, and you're going to tell them, hey, this is a gift. You get to keep playing today because I'm only going yellow for that, but that was a bad tackle. It was from behind. It was, through the back of his leg. It injured him. There's lots of reasons I could go red here. So this yellow card is a gift, buddy. So when you put that kind of effort into explaining how bad a tackle it is, the victimized team may still be wishing that it was red, but they'll also know you're not just punishing this moment, you're also making sure that any future transgressions are going to be dealt with. So maybe I'm going to say, hey man, this is a gift and don't make me have to think about you again. You give me another chance to give you a card, I'm not going to blink. So 3, once you call the trainer and coach out, you're still going to monitor the whole area, but you're going to do it from a distance. You're not going to, stand right there. You're not going to distract yourself by having conversations with players or, run over to the coach and turn your back to the player while you tell them why it's a card, even though everybody knows why it's a card. So maybe you're going to go to your assistant and you'll sit there and discuss the foul while you're still monitoring the coach and the trainer. You're going to stay near the injury, but you aren't going to be right there. And if you are right there, you're just asking to get yelled at. So don't stand next to the injured player. Okay, and then finally, if you do get yelled at, look, folks, when a coach is invited on the field to tend an injured player, then he or she's out there to tend the injured player. Anything else that coach does that is provocative or disrespectful, they're out of their technical area and they're acting that way. And what's worse, not only are they out of the technical area, they're on the field. Leaving the technical area, entering the field, and provoking a confrontation is a straight red card per IFAB's laws of the game. High school rules don't get into those weeds, but I don't care. High school still has technical areas, bench areas, and they're marked on the field, and the coaches are expected to follow decorum in them. I see this coach barking at the other team. I tell him to tend to his injured player one time. Coach, you're here to deal with your hurt player. Deal with that. If he ignores me and he keeps doing it, if he goes in on what color card I gave the opposing player, I'm going back pocket and I'm done with him. I mean, he's out here at my permission. He doesn't get to use this as an opportunity to stir things up. The game is for the players, not the coaches. That black team has an assistant coach who can finish the game. If this coach wants to make this whole thing about him, fine. He can sit in the stands for the semifinal and mull over his life choices. Yellow card or red card, either way, it's not going to put his kid's knee back together. Look, we constantly hear all the time about referees who say, the abuse and being an official, it's just not worth it. Well, there are rules written into the game that clearly state certain behaviors are not acceptable and have clear and concise punishments for those behaviors. So when those behaviors occur, the very same referees who complain, the abuse isn't worth it, are the ones who stand there and take it without doing anything about it. I mean, I absolutely believe that mistreatment of referees is a huge problem. And of course, the people who do the mistreating ultimately can fix this problem by not mistreating the officials. But when those people do ignore the rules, for crying out loud, do something about it. I have a small amount of empathy for why this coach was upset. Like I said, there are red card elements in this challenge. But as I also said, there's good reason for this to be yellow, too. If a coach can't see through his own bias and favoritism and decides to abuse his invitation to be on the field, mind you, an invitation that was not actually extended in this clip, to then set off a mass confrontation with opposing players and terrorize the referee about his decision making, publicly showing that referee up in front of everybody on the field, and then the referee does nothing about that coach's behavior? The rules of the game empower you to do something about it. If you don't, fine, but just don't complain to me that the abuse makes officiating not worth the effort. So before I close this out, the coach, of course, pulls the same stunt in the state semifinal because, he got away with it in the quarterfinal, so why wouldn't he try it again? I'm not going to break this tackle down as extensively, but it is clean. It's a good slide tackle. The attacker's momentum carries him into the tackler on the ground and he gets hurt. This is not an angle choice issue from the prior clip. It's an unfortunate injury that occurs as a result of a legal good tackle. The trainer's invited onto the field. The coach is walking towards his injured player again. He's on the field. It should only be to help the injured player. And he turns and he starts going in on the referee and the assistant. And the referee, I'm guessing the referee knew what this coach did in the quarterfinal. So he gives 0 warnings and takes 0 tolerance. Yellow card is out immediately. It's shown to the coach. And then he tells him to get his whiny ass off the field. Which I'm sure he didn't use the word ass. But it suggests to me that he wasn't even invited out there in the first place. The trainer's job is to take care of the injured player. So the coach then begrudgingly walks off the field, turns to take his frustration out on the 4th official, who puts up with it for what I think is probably just the right amount of time before telling him to knock it off and shut his claptrap. I am perfectly okay with the management of this second clip, even as I talked about how a red card would be justified in the first clip. So the coach used up all his goodwill with his behavior in the quarterfinal. Quick yellow here. If he complies, if not, give him a second one. Amen. I am sure that there are going to be coaches or parents who are watching this and are going to say, geez, Marshak, you really hate coaches. Nice power trip. Inevitably, anytime a referee who does their job, that's the lame-ass argument we always get. The referee wants to be the center of attention. So here's my response to that. The rules say coach is only permitted on the field when he's asked to be on the field to manage the injury. The rules say if the coach leaves a technical area to dissent or instigate a confrontation, this behavior can and probably should result in a red card. So when a coach ignores these rules takes advantage of his own player's injury, then ignores the injured player and uses it to publicly show up the officials in the middle of the field. Who's on the power trip here? Who in both of these clips made himself the center of attention? Foul, yellow card, red card, none of that is going to uninjure your player. Coaches who act like this inevitably have players who relentlessly argue every call on the field, and those same coaches can't understand why their kids always get so many dissent cautions. I'm not saying I don't understand coach frustration and concern for the safety of their players. I will be the first person to point out that too many referees are not confident enough to enforce the rules as written and issue cards or cards of the right color to appropriately protect players. If you don't believe me, just do a quick search on YouTube for Minnesota State Referee Committee and check out the two-footed tackle series I ran last year. There's lots of examples of referees not being harsh enough. But that does not mean that every time a player goes down hurt, that anything less than a red card is inadequate. Even if one is justified and the referee doesn't go there, those mistakes don't justify a public shaming of the official. So anybody knows me will tell you that I watch a ton of soccer. My wife probably says I watch too much soccer. In all the years I have watched soccer, I have never seen one of these tirades cause the referee to go, you know what, coach, good point. You're right. I'm going to send that player off. You know, a kid cranks a shot over the crossbar from 12 yards, coaches. Do you scream at the kid about not getting his knee over the ball and then yell out to the field that that kid is terrible and think that somehow treating that kid that way is going to get him to fix his technique next time? So why would yelling and publicly degrading a referee over a decision somehow change that referee's decision next time? Okay, and there's actually an answer to that, right? Because that's the next coach argument is, I'm not trying to get the referee to change the call. I'm trying to get the referee to change the next call. So you want a referee who does makeup calls and is easily influenced by public embarrassment. That's odd because most of my conversations with coaches and fans usually just bemoan all the referees who do makeup calls and talk about how weak the referee could be for being so easily influenced by a coach who's whining all the time. Look, spare me any potential justification for the coach's behavior in these two clips. He wants to be disappointed, frustrated, or mad. I don't deny him that right. What I do deny him is the right to march out onto the field under the guise of caring for the injured player and then ignoring that player while making a spectacle of pissing on the referee over it. Be the adult on the field. It's a youth game. As for the referee in the first clip, there was a lot more from this game to discuss, but I'm just going to use this clip because this clip was taught, unfortunately, I think really poorly in the Minnesota high school referee meetings. And I feel that people need to actually get some advice on how to deal with this situation so it doesn't boil over. So the take-home points are: 1, when the card is orange, don't pull a quick card. That's bad, not good. 2, when a player is hurt by a challenge, get medical help on the field right away. Whatever you do, just look like you care about the injured player, which, didn't really happen in this clip. 3, administrative duties can wait until there's, we've burned off the potential for game disrepute and mass confrontation. Get the field settled first. Don't turn your back to it. Then go ahead and, if you want to go tell the coach why you gave the card, go ahead and do it then. Lastly, coaches can come out onto the field to tend injured players, but when they're out there for that, that's the only reason they're on the field. Using that as an excuse to go in on the referee should never be tolerated by the officials. One quick, firm verbal warning, then pull a card and expect that behavior will stop, and if it doesn't, go ahead and get rid of the coach. Next time I see you, I'll be burning my own performance to the ground just to prove you all that I'm not afraid to turn the sword on myself. So, thanks for listening.